Story 1. The Voice at the Rest Stop, I-40, New Mexico. I had been on the road for nearly 14 hours, hauling refrigerated freight from Flagstaff toward Amarillo. It was past midnight when I pulled into a rest stop off I-40 in eastern New Mexico. If you've ever driven that stretch, you know the kind. A lonely slab of asphalt carved into the desert, a few dim sodium lights buzzing overhead, a bathroom building with peeling paint, and an endless black horizon swallowing everything else. I killed the engine and let the silence settle in. Out there, even the wind felt heavy. I climbed into the sleeper cab, pulled the curtain, and tried to rest. My plan was simple: grab 4 hours of sleep before sunrise, then finish the haul. Sometime around 2 a.m., I woke up. At first, I thought the sound was part of a dream, but then I heard it again. A voice, high-pitched, fragile. It sounded like a child, just outside my truck. "Help me, please." I froze. No movement, no breath, just sat there in the dark, trying to convince myself I was imagining it. Nobody should be out there. Not at that hour. Not in the middle of nowhere. The voice came again, clearer this time, drifting through the desert night. "Sir, please, help me." Every instinct I had screamed at me to stay put, but curiosity has a way of cutting through fear. I pulled back the curtain and peered out the windshield. Nothing, just the pale yellow of the parking lot lights and the shadows of the scrub brush swaying in the wind. I told myself maybe it was a radio bleeding through or a recording from another trucker, but when I cracked open the window, I heard it again, closer now. "Please, back here." The sound came from behind my trailer. I grabbed my flashlight, slipped on my boots, and stepped out. The desert air was cold, sharp in my lungs. I walked slowly around the rig, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the dark. "Hello?" I called. My voice sounded too loud, too naked in that empty space. No answer. I rounded the back of the trailer. The gravel crunched under my boots, and the wind seemed to hush itself. I swung the light across the lot, the bathrooms, the fence line. Nothing. And then, in the stillness, the voice came again. This time it wasn't from the ground. It was above me. Soft but clear, like it was whispering straight into my ear. "Help me." I dropped the flashlight. My heart slammed against my ribs. I didn't wait to see where it came from. I sprinted back to the cab, slammed the door, and locked it. My hand shook as I jammed the keys into the ignition. The engine roared to life, and I peeled out of that rest stop like hell itself was chasing me. The next morning, when I finally had the courage to think about what happened, I convinced myself it was just exhaustion, maybe a dream tangled with reality. But later that week, another driver told me about that same rest stop. He said it had a history. Kids abducted from there back in the 90s. Some were never found. To this day, I don't know what I heard that night. All I know is the desert keeps its secrets, and sometimes they call out when you least expect it. Story 2. The Man by the Pump, Truck Stop, Missouri. It was just after 2 in the morning when I rolled into a truck stop outside St. Louis. I had been pushing hard all day, and my tank was scraping empty. The lot was nearly deserted. Only a few rigs parked along the far end, their marker lights glowing faintly in the humid Missouri night. I pulled up to a pump, killed the engine, and stepped out. The air was thick, carrying that mix of diesel, asphalt, and summer heat that never really cools down. I stretched my back and grabbed the fuel nozzle. That's when I noticed him. Across from me, on the other side of the pump island, a man stood perfectly still. He wasn't fueling, wasn't smoking, wasn't even leaning on anything, just standing, motionless, about 15 feet away. His clothes were dark, plain, could have been a hoodie, maybe a jacket. His head was tilted slightly down, but I could feel his eyes locked on me. At first, I thought maybe he was another driver waiting his turn, but there was something wrong about him. He wasn't moving, not a muscle, just staring. I tried to ignore it, set the nozzle, and watch the numbers climb. But every few seconds, I glanced back, same posture, same stare. My pulse started to pick up. I decided to break the silence. "Evening," I said, trying to sound casual. Nothing, not a nod, not a word, just that fixed stare, like he was studying me. I shifted on my boots, suddenly aware of how alone I was. The convenience store was closed for the night, and the clerk's booth was dark, no one else around. The pump clicked off, startling me. I hung the nozzle back and reached for my cap. That's when the man moved. Slowly, deliberately, he lifted his head. Our eyes met under the buzzing light, and I swear he smiled. Not a friendly smile, but something stretched too wide, too slow. Then he started walking toward me, step by step. No rush, just that grin, steady, unblinking. My gut twisted. Every instinct told me to leave. I yanked open the cab door and climbed inside, slamming it shut. My hands fumbled with the keys, but I got the engine roaring just as he reached the side of my truck. I didn't wait. Yes, I threw it in gear and pulled out hard, the tires screeching against the pavement. In the mirror, I caught one last glimpse of him standing there in the middle of the lane, watching me drive away. That grin still plastered across his face. I didn't stop until I hit Illinois. I fueled up again at a well-lit station surrounded by other truckers. But the whole time, I couldn't shake the image. Weeks later, I was parked in another lot outside Kansas City when I overheard two drivers talking in the lounge. One of them mentioned seeing a man hanging around the pumps late at night, just standing, just smiling. I didn't join their conversation. But when they described the way he looked, plain clothes, still as a statue, smile that never faded, I knew it was the same man. And I've come to realize something. It wasn't about fuel or money or even me personally. Whoever or whatever he is, he's waiting for drivers like me to stop in the dead of night. And every time I fuel up alone now, I can't help but wonder if he'll be standing there again, by the pump, with that same impossible smile. Story 3. The Thing in the Woods, Highway Rest Area, Maine. It was late October when I found myself hauling a refrigerated load up through Maine. The air was already cold, the kind of damp chill that sinks into your bones. Around midnight, I pulled into a rest area off I-95 deep in the pine country. The place was nearly empty, just one sedan parked far down by the bathrooms and a couple of streetlights flickering against the mist. I chose a spot near the edge of the lot where the woods pressed right up against the asphalt. My plan was simple: 4 hours of sleep, then back on the road before dawn. I shut off the engine and climbed into the sleeper cab. The world outside faded into silence, broken only by the occasional creak of cooling metal. I pulled the blanket up to my chest, ready to let exhaustion take me. That's when I heard it, a faint crunch of leaves, slow, deliberate, like footsteps circling the truck. I told myself it was nothing. A deer, maybe? Maine is full of them. But then I heard it again. Closer this time, pacing along the driver's side. I slid open the curtain and peeked through the glass. Nothing, just the shifting shadows of pine branches swaying in the wind. I tried to convince myself it was my imagination, but then the sound came again. A heavy scrape against the gravel, then another, and then silence. I waited, frozen in place. my breath fogging the cold glass. Finally, curiosity pushed me to check the mirrors. That's when I saw it. In the convex mirror on the passenger side, something tall and pale stood just beyond the glow of the streetlight. It was thin, too thin, with arms that looked impossibly long. The head tilted slightly, as if it was studying me. I blinked, and when I looked again, it was gone. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to leave. I fired up the engine, the roar shattering the silence of the woods. I shifted into gear, but before I could pull away, something slammed against the rear of the trailer. The whole rig shuddered. My hands clenched the wheel so hard, my knuckles went white. I floored it, tearing out of that rest area like a bat out of hell. In the mirrors, the trees swallowed the lot behind me, and whatever was there stayed hidden in the dark. At sunrise, curiosity got the better of me. I pulled over at another stop and walked around to check the trailer. That's when I noticed the mud streaked along the back doors, and in it, prints. They weren't boot prints. They weren't animal tracks either. They were long, almost skeletal, with 4 deep impressions like claws. I finished that haul, but I didn't take another night stop in Maine for a long time. And whenever I think back to that rest area, I can still feel those eyes on me, watching from the trees. Whatever walked around my rig that night wasn't human, and I pray I never cross paths with it again.